Perfect.
Cool. All right. So for the folks who are still with us, and for the folks who are about to tune back in for Dr. Grossberg's talk coming up next, later Jay McClelland, and then a bunch of other people after those next two events. I'm going to take a little bit more of your time just before then to re-explain why we're all here and how we got here and all the great people that actually put this together to make this wonderful event a reality. So first off, you've seen Continual AI around and you've seen our name. We are the hosts of this event. Continual AI is not a field. It is not a company. It is not anything else other than a bunch of really interested people across the academia and industry who are all passionate about continual learning for AI research as well as neuroscience, who work together to make progress in that field of reality. We are an official nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2018. I have been around since 2018, and a lot of the folks who are putting this on have been around not long after that. And to be honest, I never really thought we would ever be doing something this big with this many people. We had always hoped to just do anything we could to bring the community together. And we'll explain some of the things that we've done towards that mission, but this is certainly one of the best celebrations, I think, of what we aim to do to really just support all sorts of researchers across, like I said, academia and industry, to fuel continual learning research however we can. So we're really happy that you're here. We're really happy that you've been a part of this in any way, whether you're just hearing about us right now or you've been with us since our very first paper talks on YouTube. We're just overwhelmed with joy by all the support that we've gotten over these past few years. And so if nothing else, this is just our chance to say thank you. Like I said, our main goal is to bring the community together, and we do that through any way that we possibly can. We probably most notably have developed one of the flagship libraries for continual learning research, which really just serves as a tool to save as many people who are interested from people just learning and to use it in courses all the way up to research that has been published across multiple papers. Avalanche has been tremendously successful, and hopefully it's been tremendously useful. It's easy to gauge GitHub stars and all of those stats. Really hope that it makes doing research in this field more reproducible and so on, and just saves folks a lot of time. And so let us know how it can, and we can chat a little bit more about that later. And we also had a great session on that happened earlier in this program that should be available later in the coming weeks. We have, as a part of Avalanche, a great repository of continual learning baselines to try and standardize and serve the field and giving some good markers and flag posts in the ground to see what we need to hit across multiple continual learning strategies and data sets and so on. As I hinted at, we've had a tremendously successful seminar series over the past years. And at this point, our YouTube library of all of these wonderful talks from speakers all over the world and across time zones are all available freely on YouTube for anyone to go and watch. And it's really a tremendous resource, like I said, for folks trying to understand a specific area of continual learning, or to hear kind of the latest research that's going on. We've done a lot of co-organizing and organizing of other events previous to this one, such as sponsoring the CL Vision workshop and others. And we've had some great competitions and helping collaborate with other sponsors to help with challenges and other great goals for these specific conferences to really propel specific algorithms to move that type of research forward. And lastly, this unconference that you hear. And I can't reiterate this enough. None of this would be possible without the community that has just supported us for multiple years. And most recently, we unveiled memberships. And much of the infrastructure that supports the organism, the organization comes from this sponsorship funds, and 100% of it goes back into the organization. There is nothing that isn't reinvested to make either our organization run on the day-to-day, as well as fund big events like this, as well as sponsorships and the voluntary work of multiple people. And I'm excited that I'll get to highlight some of the ones that put together this conference in a little bit. But before I tell you who made this happen, I think the why is really important. And you're all here, so you have some idea that continual learning really is a fundamental topic at the forefront of AI. Like many aspects of AI, they've all had their initial proposals decades ago. Continual learning is not different from those kind of boom and bust cycles. But despite the fact that it was first thought of and proposed, and some early solutions were proposed in the 80s, if not before, now we are really seeing a huge resurgence. And even in 2018, back when we put Continual AI together, we were kind of just seeing that inflection point of folks really seeing the benefit of continual learning, particularly in problems that algorithms were able to tackle, and just from a fundamental standpoint of artificial intelligence theory. So we are seeing a bunch more papers than we have before, and we've quantified this actually to see that inflection point come. We're seeing continual learning sprout out at multiple workshops and at major conferences. And so with all of this momentum from the entire field and across an interdisciplinary set of fields across domains, we really think that it's important to start bringing folks back together and kind of pull all the different silos of continual learning research together to kind of focus on a shared mission and build an even stronger community to solve some of the biggest problems facing it. And so we think Continual AI's role in all of this is to support all of these researchers, to connect them, bring them together, and to help facilitate their research and communication however we think and the community suggests that we could be most helpful. So please be communicative. If you think there's something we could do to help the field in any way, please let us know, because those are the missions that drive us. ContinualAI Unconf, we call it an Unconf because, you know, it's a little bit different than your traditional conference. There's some big things that we really are trying to push that you don't often see at conferences to try and be more inclusive. So we have a multi-time zone format. So there's not very many conferences where you have a start in one time zone and end all the way across the globe in the last time zone as the Earth turns around. So we're really trying to be inclusive on bringing content to whoever wants to tune in at any time, and they can see that live, at least for a 1 day, and depending on which time zone you're in, 2-day event. So it's virtual, and with the support of generous sponsors and the community, it's completely free. So there shouldn't be any barriers other than an internet connection for you to be able to get to this content. We're also trying to push more scientific quality and dialogue. And so we're pushing individual talks, and particularly something to highlight here is the pre-registration of the articles. I'll touch on this more in a bit, but pre-registration has been really successful in other fields to build a more rigorous research protocol and timeline and sequence. And so we're really hoping that pre-registration here will be useful. And lastly, mentoring and advice sharing. It's one thing to hear from great people as they talk about their research to an audience, but everyone knows it's certainly different to get one-on-one help and advice and guidance on your specific situation. And we really want to push and build those connections between researchers. So, like I said, there's a bunch of now desperate kind of siloed fields across continual learning research. And so all of our programming stuff thus far has been interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary across deep continual learning, neuroscience, online learning, real world applications, and many more that don't quite fit into these categories, but we still think are important. So with mentoring and discussion sessions, we've really kind of spanned the gamut in trying to sample as many fields as we can within continual AI. And we know that we can't hit everything, but at least we can start somewhere and hopefully in the future pull in things that we may have missed. So I mentioned pre-registration. And so folks who have done any work in psychology should know about what pre-registration is. But if you've never heard of it in general, I'll just reiterate briefly. The idea spurred primarily through what psychology called the replication crisis, which meant that when people tried to sat down and pull some landmark studies in psychology, they couldn't replicate. And there's a bunch of reasons why this was that we don't need to get into. And there was a bunch of proposed solutions to fix this, which we also don't necessarily need to get into. But one of the proposed solutions was pre-registration, and pre-registration serves more than just a replication need too. What it also does is it kind of puts the experimental design and the theory of an experiment before the actual time and energy and often money to make the experiment happen. With the fear being that say you run an experiment and then you finally go to peer review, it's only then after the experiment that you really get some degree of feedback to get it published or not published. And so if you can get some feedback and review before it's pre-registered, you get the assurance that you can have it published, then not only are you a little bit less worried of actually running the experiment, but in addition, you're also more incentivized to publish null results. And this should be more beneficial to the field because everyone knows that there is some bias. Each field has their own specific ratio of what that is, but positive results almost always tend to get published far more than null results do in the literature. And so hopefully pre-registration should balance that out because irrespective of what your final results are, if you did your experiment as rigorously as you proposed, it had already been reviewed, then your paper should still get published irrespective of your result being positive or negative. And so you get a healthy mix of positive and negative results. Reasonable ideas will still get published, and it's easier to plan your research. Note that we're not the first people to do this in well, certainly not the first people to do this in science. Like I said, psychology probably gets that mark, and there's probably other fields before them that get less attribution. But we're also certainly not the first ML. One of the ones that we know that jumped to mind was a neural IPS workshop that was specifically for trying to bring more pre-registration in machine learning. And we think it's a really good idea, and we really wanted to try it in this context. And from our view as organizers, we think it went pretty well. We'll certainly be trying to solicit feedback from all of those who had submitted, but we think it could be a really good idea, and we hope that this experiment was useful and get all the benefits that pre-registration can garner, and see how they should be tailored specifically for an ML audience and workflow and so on. So what we did was we had folks write a proposal paper. It outlined their background, methods, and their experimental protocol. And this protocol was then peer reviewed by a set of reviewers that was completely double blind. So they were just basing their review upon the general hypothesis, the methods to adequately and technically answer that hypothesis, and the rigor and flexibility of their protocol to assert that hypothesis is either true or null. Upon acceptance, the proposal ideas are presented at the Unconf right here, and so that folks can share their hypothesis and plan experiments. and gather feedback. In a second stage, the proposed reviews is then, so say that the paper passes the peer review process, they get feedback from the reviewer. And so then if they pass that first stage, then they can actually go ahead and do the research in which they proposed, and they can document their results, whether or not they're positive or negative, hopefully allowing them to try things that they may not have tried prior. And so then after all of this is done, you write your paper up like normal, and then you set it for one round of review. Now, this one round of review should be a little bit quicker than the first one, actually. It should just be to assert that the methods you actually did were the ones that you proposed, and to just make sure that there isn't any last big glaring issues that break the logic of the paper. But at this point, most of the work should have already been done. All you're doing now is just filling in the results and tightening, a few little things up and making everything look presentable and understandable and clear. And then hopefully at that point, the last round of review, you can see a cohesive paper, and then we can publish that paper in PMLR, irrespective of whether or not your hypothesis was true or false. It had already been accepted. And so you don't have to worry about, oh, this isn't that convincing, or isn't that compelling of a result just because it's null. It's still publishable, and it's still useful, and it's still going to help minimize the bias that we would see across the wider array of literature. So we had 10 submissions and 6 accepted papers. You can see the titles above, and we had given the authors a nice set of dates and protocols to hit, and we were just overwhelmed and excited with all the how well it generally went for pulling something this kind of complex off for the first time. So jumping back out a little bit to some of the other aspects of the Unconf, we had a great array of contributed talks. Like we said, the Unconf is created by and for the community, and so we just want to hear what the community is passionate about and interested in. And so we had, across our 6 sessions, 13 accepted talks on a really wide and interesting variety of continual learning research. And so if you're just joining us right now, hopefully you can find the recordings of a subset of those talks at a later date, but please stick around after some of the invited talks that you're about to hear, because then you'll hear even more great continually learning research for, I think we still have a few hours left of content. So stick around, because you're not missing anything yet. So who put all this together? Continual AI and some of the wonderful, wonderful people that actually drive it forward. In terms of the general chairs, James Smith, Martin Munt, Vincenzo Lamonaco, Tyler Hayes, Andrea Cosu, and myself have worked so hard, and watching everyone just get so excited about new ideas and putting all of this together has just been great. And I have been honored and excited to work with all of these people, and just learning, and yeah, it's been great to work with all of them. So if you're planning anything in the future, these are the folks to grab, as well as all of them. We have more people that are passionate about the community, and to see this outpouring of desire to put this together, from everything from emailing speakers to coming up with ideas to setting up Zoom infrastructure to managing reviews for papers. Even though this conference is virtual, it is no less easy than any conference organizing would be. And so we really want to extend our biggest thank you to all the volunteers that helped put this together and make this a reality. We've had an exceptional steering committee that has helped guide and inform our views, and we really hope to continue working with them in the future across all sorts of activities in the organization. And we hope that we can find ways to get them more involved and use more of their ideas to really push ourselves forward and make ourselves better. So a few last stats before I step in the way of the talks. We've had over 400 registered attendees. I think the last time that we actually quantified it, we were at 450, and I think a few more folks actually have signed up. So for the first time that we had this conference, we've had a really good outpouring of support of people who have registered. Like I said, we have enough content to fill 24 hours, 10 invited talks, 6 community talk sessions. Those are the 6 pre-registration papers I was just mentioning, as well as 13 contributed talks from other speakers in the community, as well as 3 open discussions, 2 mentoring sessions, 2 tutorials, and a panel discussion. And so for putting this conference together for the first time, it's just been so exciting to see all of this support from everyone to make it happen. I'll give you a little bit of a recap what you've missed, so you can look out for some of the content if we make it available. The conference opened with Vincenzo, the then president of Continual AI, talking about and welcoming everyone to here. We heard from Marco Gori. Then we had an open discussion with him, and then we had a hands-on workshop session with Avalanche, which I just mentioned, and then we went through some of the papers that were submitted with talks. We then started talking about navigating hurdles for the online continual world and wild with Ameya Prabhu at Oxford. We had a workshop for River Library, a continual learning library, as well as some more paper sessions. Christian Buck Calderon took us through how neuroscience and biology can come together with ML to help answer some questions. And then we had an open discussion regarding that later on, as well as a few additional papers. We then had a great invited talk from Di Yang from Stanford University, and then a panel discussion on applications of continual learning. And that brings us to the present moment, where I'm saying hello and welcome to all the folks who are still here and all the folks who are just now joining us. And very quickly, we will then hear from Steve Grossberg, who's at Boston University and was one of the OGs when it comes to deep learning research and has coined the term stability plasticity. And so works very closely with on the computational neuroscience side, as well as the artificial intelligence side, and has pioneered a handful of really influential models in the field. And afterwards, we'll hear from Jay McClellan, who quite literally wrote the book on parallel processing machines. And I know him best through his collaboration with a professor I worked quite a bit with, Bruce McNaughton, where they outlined what we call one of the central dogmas of memory consolidation in our field, that to overcome catastrophic forgetting and continual learning, that the brain, particularly hippocampus and cortex, work together in slow and fast learning to overcome catastrophic forgetting. We'll then hear from a paper session, and then we have so much more content later. Afterwards, later on for the next session, we'll have Savita Ramasi, who will give a talk, some more papers. Xiangyong Cho will give a talk on online continual learning in practical scenarios. And then we'll have more open discussion afterwards. And then our last session will be Amit Yaskan from Riken, who will talk about how to build machines to adapt quickly. Beneath will give a talk on going beyond continual learning towards organic lifelong learning. We'll have our last paper session, and then one of the general chairs, Tyler Hayes, will close us out with a parting message and a few final words to let us go back into the real world after we leave the virtual one for this conference. So I have talked too much, and you are certainly less excited to hear from me than all of the great speakers. So I will stop preventing us from hearing from them. We have a few minutes till we hit our time. So in this last minute or so, I'm just going to say thank you again to everyone. seeing Continual AI grow from when Vincenzo, me, David, and the German and a handful of people were just emailing back and forth, all the way now to what, 2,000 Slack members, a few hundred registered members, and we're putting together a conference. Avalanche is being used widely across the field. It's just amazing to see that, you know, in what, 4 years that we are able to do events like this now. So thank you everyone in the community for entrusting us to help however we can. And please don't let this be the last time you've engaged with our community. You can visit our website, continualai.org, join us on Slack. After the conference and the organizers get some sleep again, we'll start back up on some of the regular programming that you've come to know. And please let us know if there's anything that we can do to make this field better and make your lives as research betters. Please reach out to us, because that's our mission and that's what we want to do. So thanks everyone. Give a huge round of applause to all the organizers that made this happen and our sponsors. And without further ado, I'll pass the mic to the session chair, who will be Camille Gonzalez, and who will keep everything continually running smoothly. So thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keiland, for that great introduction on Continual AI and the Unconference. I have been convinced all over again that this is a great initiative. Exactly.